Welcome, folks. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol na'eh b'dbarei. Chaim. Oh, the warmth doesn't compare to the warmth of learning Chassidus. We continue in the Maimer Ki Yishalcha Bincha, when your child will ask you, Mochar, the wise son, the wise child, Mad Edus HaChukim HaMishpatim Asher Tziva Hashem Elokeinu V'Yisanu. What are the Edus, testimonies, the Chukim, the statutory laws, and Mishpatim, the ordinances that Hashem our God has commanded you? So we're going to go into the word now, chukim, into the actual very word to understand. Statutory laws means laws that are beyond our comprehension. Laws that come from the encompassing light of God, soivev kol almim, as it's called, that's therefore beyond. Yet, when we say beyond, means it's beyond something, it has to be relative to it, to that which you're beyond. So let's understand the mitzvahs that come from, that are the element of chukim. Every mitzvah, every command of God has an element that's beyond logic, beyond rationality. In a way, important to appreciate that our makeup is, rationality, but we have a part in us that's beyond rationality in our soul. Think of your day and how much you think you do. Well, the commandments of God, even those that are rational, like not to steal, a business law and the like, have an element in them that is achoik. Statutory law, beyond logic. And then eventually where we will get is to appreciate that there's something greater about the element of edus. Let's go into chakik. Okay. Now, in the aspect of the mitzvah that is a choik, there is a feeling that you are engaged in the will of God. As the will of God is not limited to logic and rationality, right? God's will, as actually the way we are created in the image of God and have a part of God in us, our will is greater than reason. Meaning, very simply, when you have a reason for something, take away the reason, then you won't have that something that you will engage in, devote yourself to. But if you have a will for it, strong will, then, and it's not based on reason, right? You want a family. Now, you might give reason to it, but the truth is, the reason why you want it, it's beyond logic. There's an element of logic. Actually, yeah. In any case, will is beyond reason. Now we'll understand this concept of choik from the actual word. The root word of choik is chakika, which means engraving. There's two aspects to when you engrave, in a physical way, and we'll see in a spiritual way. Because, of course, everything in the physical world, it devolves from the spiritual. So, in a physical sense, when what is engraving? Let's compare it. When you write ink on a parchment, a Torah scroll, right? Ink on a paper, you have paper and you have ink. The two separate things, they come together, right? But of course, they're not inherently one, right? As opposed to engraving. Engravement means that the letters are now inherently part of the stone that they're engraved in. They are one, much greater unity, shall we say. It's not an addition to the stone, it's part of the stone. Ink is an addition to the cloth, to the skin that you write the mezuzah on. What does that mean above? That's the idea of keser, crown, which means will. Right? The will of an individual is not an addition to the person. The fact that you want something. There's always a desire, just like you always are. There's always some kind of desire. And maybe a strong desire might not be a strong desire, whatever it is. You want some coffee, l'chaim. You want to learn Chassidus, right? There's always something that you are wanting of. That wanting, that desire is not an addition to you, in a sense. Right. So Kesser, above the level of Kesser, excuse me. Commercial break. So Kesser is the crown. Kesser is on the person, over the person. Right. So Kesser above is that level of godliness that's soiviv, that's encompassing, just like a crown encompasses the person. So beyond the person, the person is rationality, right? Beginning with the head. The crown is beyond that, above it, encompassing it. That represents will. That's all encompassing. That will of God is not something added to him. In other words, there isn't like God wants, God and what he wants is something added to him. He wants the mitzvah. He wants us right now to learn Chassidus, mystical teachings. That's what he wants right now. That's not something added. It's an expression of the essence. Okay. Which is just as God is limitless, so likewise the will that God wants. How much does he want us to learn right now? Infinitely so. Right? In other words, an infinite desire of God that we do a mitzvah, that we connect to him, that we learn right now. Right? That is just so that's the idea of hakika, engraving. When you engrave a word on a stone, it's one with the stone. It's not separate. When you take ink and write on parchment, you have two separate things coming together. Here there's a oneness. That's Soiviv, right? So with that, and therefore, as when God, the measure says that my covenant, when remember when the world, second, my covenant day and night are hukais. They are like God created the the nature of the world as a choik, meaning beyond logic, um, that he's engraved it in the world. The nature of the world is engraved. In other words, yeah, it's engraved and as God creates day and night, that is engraved in the, shall we say, yeah, as the nature of the world. Okay, now, so that's one aspect of the word chok, hakika, engraved. Is not separate from the will of God, keser, the encompassing light of God, is not separate of God. There's a oneness, right? Yet at the same time, this is going to be a little of a challenge to get this idea. What happens when you engrave in a stone? You're actually taking away from the stone. Even though the word that you engrave in the stone, the letters you engrave in the stone are one with the stone, but you have actually taken away from the stone. And by taking away the stone, you've actually taken away from the beauty of the stone, the shine of the stone, because now you engraved in it. Well, the engraving will take away from the shine, from the beauty of the stone, right? The completion of the stone, because you've now it's incomplete. You've engraved in it. Is that clear? In other words, you've taken away. That's a come down in the stone. The pure gem, you know, the pure gem as is the light that it will refract, the you know the beauty of it is much greater when it's not engraved. You're not taking away anything from it. And when you are carved in it, you're actually taking away from, it's the opposite of the stone, right? Because you took away from the stone. It's the opposite idea of the first idea. First idea where he said that the letters are not separate from the stone, not like ink on parchment. The ink is separate from the parchment. You could erase it from the parchment and still have the parchment left. But you can't do that from engraving. It's part and parcel of the stone now, right? Which shows on something that's a unified force in above, which is all-encompassing light of God. Thank you. All-encompassing light of God. Right? That is one with God. Yet at the same time, it's a come down of the gem, of the stone, because you're taking something away from it. And it doesn't have the same shine. How does that express itself in the concept? That's the metaphor. Achoik means what? Beyond logic. Oh, so this is a come down now because you're negating something in the mitzvah that the mitzvah element of chok, which is beyond logic, right? So soifev, this level that we're talking about, all-encompassing light, is actually a come down from the gem, the metaphor of the gem as is. That is not simplistic whole oneness. As it was in the beginning. So through this, so maybe the fact that you have to negate something means there's something to negate. That's what you're doing when you're carving out. You're negating from the stone. Meaning, Soiviv, what's Soiviv doing? Negating rationality and logic. That's a come down. So that's the chok of that when we do right. So as our sages say, the statutory law chok, the laws, and every mitzvah that has an aspect of a chok that's beyond logic, as I have a decree that I've made, as our sages say, and you have no permission to question it. Right? That element, no question. There's no question, just acceptance. In other words, it's negating our intelligence because you're not allowed to question. Well, that is similar to the come down of the stone that is through engraving. That the intelligence, right? Who's negating intelligence? Who in me would negate intelligence? My will. My will can nix intelligence. I want something, even though my intelligence tells me it's not good for you, I still want it. We all know that. We've all experienced that at least once. Not the coffee. All experienced it. So that to negate the intelligence, right, is again in the stone, negating the stone. How? By carving from the stone. You took something away. Because the understanding of something is the opposite of the will. Now, I gave an example of it's inherently the opposite. Will means negating intelligence. Whether the intelligence is telling you good or bad, it doesn't matter. What just by will, pure will, not will because based on intelligence, right? That's not a pure will. Pure will negates intelligence. You want it because you want it. Like I said, a person wants to have a family. If you're going to base it on intelligence, you'll end up being like so many people today that, there's oh yeah, I forgot the acronym. Happy without kids, something like that. I forget that goes around, whatever. Something I forget what it is. Yeah, and there's the whole movement, whatever. Right, right. So that's also a will. In other words, we want what we want because we want it. So, but here we're saying that in the mitzvah that you cannot question means it's negating intelligence. Now, accordingly, now we can understand why edus, testimonial aspect of the mitzvah, and the mitzvah that testifies on God and the oneness of God is greater than chukim. Because chukim is the will of in a mitzvah, the way it comes down to negate intelligence and rationality. It's contrary to it by definition, right? Edus, on the other hand, is the will of mitzvahs, the way they're rooted in the essence of God, and they reflect the essence of God. That aspect. They are a testimony. Edus means testimony. They testify to that. Patricia, is the stone a representation of unwillingness of our heart to submit? No. That's a different, I shouldn't say, Patricia, it's not wrong what you just said. Yeah, the stone in our heart is, well, we're talking about a gem now, and it's a different metaphor, right? Two different metaphors. A stone can be a stone heart, right? Which means we learned that in chapters 29 and 30 in Tanya, if you remember, particularly in chapter 30 of Tanya. We learned that concept of when your heart just isn't responsive. It's like a stone heart. But here we're talking about a gem that is a beautiful, pure gem, simplistic whole, right? So it's a different metaphor, but yeah, what you're saying is correct, but not in our context. All right, folks. Ooh, very late. I hope you got that unbelievable metaphor of engraving, the two opposites that it holds, right? So it's one with the stone, and yet taking away from the stone and making it less stone.